Hey there, this is Steve Becker with Valiantys, and I'm recording this video today around anyone on the web permissions and what the problem is with those, as well as just a way to clean it up in an efficient manner, because sometimes you'll get a lot of default users who they'll just mark their filters as anyone on the web, and as a lot of Jira admins know, this can be a security problem, because if you have any sensitive information, then pretty much anyone on the web, regardless if they are logged in or not, can access those. So, sometimes you'll see client instances where anyone on the web is being used pretty in a pretty high volume, and sometimes having to clean up all of those can be a huge task in of itself. So, once again, this is why we're making the video for this. So, we got this little page to help me out here, but just giving another brief intro, in Jira Data Center, filters shared with anyone on the web grant public access, even to users who are not logged in. This can expose sensitive information if not managed carefully. To restrict access, we can modify filter permissions to limit visibility to logged in users or specific groups. Going down a little bit deeper into this problem, when a Jira filter is shared with anyone on the web, any user with the filter's URL can access it, regardless of whether they are logged into Jira. I'm just going to keep reiterating that. This can expose potentially sensitive information, even if project permissions restrict access to issue data, as the JQL of the filter is still readable. And this is very problematic if your Jira instance has anonymous access enabled. So we got some good documentation from Atlassian we'll start just looking at first. They recommend going around using a combination of the database as well as API, but making updates in the database can be, I don't want to say not best practice, but you sometimes want to avoid working inside the database itself and maybe using API calls instead specifically. So let's go take a look at Atlassian's documentation first and just see what they recommend. The first part of solving this is going to be identifying the filters and dashboards you need. You can see here that in Jira, these different permissions, anyone on the web and logged in user, can be found in the database as global or logged in. So if you see global or logged in, that's going to be referring to these respective permissions specifically. So that's just first thing that I want to caveat here when looking at this SQL query. So in here, this is a great query, and all they're doing is looking for anywhere in filters as well as dashboards, because dashboards use filters, to find any permission that is set to that global property. Once again, that global property represents anyone on the web, so this is just looking for anyone on the web permission being used throughout filters and dashboards. Now, if we come on down, the next part is that they're going to delete that kind of permission from the filter and then create a new permission with something like the group of just any logged in user. So just to reiterate that, they're coming down here to delete anyone on the web permission, and then they're going to create any logged in user permission to be used on that filter and dashboard instead. And right now on this version, they're doing this through the REST API here, where you can see this. They have these URLs that they're referencing. This is the permission. They're setting this as a delete request. And then, let's see. That's going to give an output that's like this. What I want to emphasize, though, once again, is that if you're uncomfortable using the database, because they're basically using SQL combined with an API call to make this work. And while that's a great approach, sometimes it might be better if you want to just use the APIs themselves to do this. So I've got a compilation of API links here. The first thing you want to do is get the shared permission for the filter. So we're just going to click on this. Once again, this is in Jira Data Center. And this is going to give you an output of that permission with the ID, the role, the type. And this type string here is going to correspond to what we were talking about earlier. If we go back to Atlassian's documentation and scroll up, that type is going to refer to global or logged in. So you'll be able to see this in the output of this API response here. We're also going to want to make sure we have that permission ID for when we go to delete it. So we first, once again, get the shared permissions from the filter that we're working with. We then grab the results, which is the ID, the type, etc. And then we're going to plug that in to delete anyone on the web filter. As you can see here, this takes in a permission ID, it takes in a filter ID, and it has permission dash ID, I guess, listed twice here. Either one should work, but you can see the structure of this up in here. We have ID for filter and permission ID for anyone on the web permission that we want to delete. So just backtracking one more time, I'm just going to keep reiterating here. We are making a call to a filter under the get all shared permissions of filter endpoint. In that result, we're going to grab the ID of that permission. And then we're going to plug this into permission ID. And we're going to keep using that same filter ID here to delete it. And that's going to bring us to our last API call that we'll make. Which is going to be, once again, using that filter ID. Then here you're going to want to use type of, if we go back to our documentation up here, type's going to represent logged in if we want to replace anyone on the web with logged in permission. And we're going to have the rest of this filled out, so we need type. Then we need edit as well as view, so you're going to want to make sure you plug these in correctly as well. And you'll get the hang of this once you do the GET request, because it's going to show you what all these default values are, which will make you help you make decisions with how you want to put this in. That's essentially going to be the 3 API calls we need just to update a filter's permissions. Now, if you have a lot of different filters, then that first step that we showed earlier with going back to the documentation that Atlassian provides us is we want to identify all those filters and dashboards, and then for every filter that we find or dashboard, we just want to loop through each filters by their IDs. Then once again, make that GET request, get those results back so we can get the permission ID. And then we're going to just keep feeding that in to the delete permission on that filter, and then the create shared permission on that filter. And then you can just loop through each filter one by one, updating the filters themselves, as opposed to spending a lot of manual effort on updating those filters, or running a query in the database that you might want to avoid doing. So that's really it for this presentation. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it helps. Thank you.